Before we dive into this last segment, I want to just mention that today is the 13th anniversary of when now convicted domestic terrorist Floyd Lee Corkins targeted the Family Research Council in our D.C. headquarters back in 2012. And the intent that he had was to commit mass murder of the FRC team and then to smear Chick-fil-A sandwiches in all of the faces of his victims. But God had other plans. And due to the grace of God and the heroism of our unarmed building manager, Leo Johnson, friends, Leo was able to subdue Floyd despite the fact that Leo had been shot. He was shot in the arm, and still he was able to subdue Floyd until the police arrived. And Leo, to every one of us, is a hero, and to this day, he is still the building manager at FRC, and we literally thank God every day for Leo, his heroism, his kind, godly spirit, and we thank the Lord for his grace and goodness to us 13 years ago, and for each of you who have faithfully prayed for us ever since that time for God's covering. We deeply, deeply appreciate it. But I wanted to bring that up because this is a very special day for each of us here at FRC. Okay, as we go into our final segment and I bring in our special guest here, many in our audience, of course, are getting all geared up for a new school year. But with each new school year and with the promises that each of those years hold for our children and grandchildren, we need to be mindful of our biblical responsibility as parents and grandparents and so forth to be the primary teachers and molders of our kids. Tony says it often that you can delegate authority of your child's education, but you cannot delegate the responsibility. And yesterday we discussed right here on this program the disturbing story of a Fairfax County, Virginia public high school where apparently a social worker there facilitated an abortion of a minor. That took place in 2021. And obviously that was against state law and it was circumventing the parents. And Governor Glenn Youngkin also has ordered now a state police to open a full criminal investigation into all of that. But this case is not the only one. How do parents prevent these type of situations from arising in their children's lives? Well, you can start by teaching your kids how to live with a biblical worldview, a worldview that shapes all aspects of their lives. And here now to share more is Dr. Jeff Myers. He's the president of Summit Ministries. He's also the author of many books. His newest, Raising Gender-Confident Kids, Helping Kids Embrace Their God-Given Design. Dr. Jeff Myers, welcome back to Washington Watch. It's always a privilege to have you.
Jody, it's great to be with you. Happy Friday. Yeah, it's back to school starting on Monday for most people in the United States of America. And they wonder, what kinds of ideologies are my kids going to run into and how do I prepare them?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just start. I opened with this about what took place in 2021 in Fairfax County, Virginia, where a social worker evidently works a deal out to take a minor to have an abortion without the parents being aware of it. And what's your thoughts of all this? How could parents have potentially changed this, do you think?
Well, Jody, you mentioned the term worldview, and I know your listeners are very familiar, your viewers are very familiar with that term, but most people in the United States of America aren't. They don't realize that if you're not operating from a Christian worldview, you are operating from some other worldview that either ignores the existence of God or discounts the existence of God as relevant. So a school like that is operating on the assumption that the parents are evil. They're operating on the assumption that the parents do not have the best interests of the children in mind, that the children do not belong to the parents are not stewards of the children, the state is the steward of the children, and therefore the school can do whatever they want to the kids. If it was just on the issue of abortion, you might say that school needs to be brought up, prosecuted, justice needs to be done. But it is quite literally half of the schools in the United States of America that are teaching, for example, gender ideology and trying to get children to believe that the God their parents told them about is either non-existent or not good, and that they may have actually been born in the wrong body.
Yeah, it's stunning. So let's go down that path. I just mentioned that case with the social worker helping with abortion. So you have that. And of course, this is all happening just right here in our neighborhood around Washington, D.C. We had in Maryland, public schools there did not think that parents should have the ability to opt their children out of story hours featuring LGBTQ themed books. And so we've got all these different type of things happening, not just around the D.C. area, but all across the country, as you've mentioned, in the gender ideology. And we obviously have long promoted homeschooling, private schools, that type of thing, but not every parent can do that. So in those situations, seeing what we're facing across the country, what can parents do better to protect their kids from these harmful values that are being pushed in so many public schools?
Well, Jody, whenever parents ask me, what do I do to help protect my kids from the culture, I do emphasize to them, even if your child does not go to a school that fights against your values, they are living in a culture that fights against your values. You homeschool your kids, you still go to the grocery store. They still go through the checkout line. They still see the bearded person walking down the aisle wearing high heels and a dress. They are going to face things that are happening in the culture, and there are three things you do. First thing is you do is to help them take every thought captive. See, as Christians, we start from the idea that God designed us. Therefore, every person has dignity. Nobody is a victim. We are victors over our circumstances. We treat every person with dignity, but we also recognize that there is a truth that God has given to us, and we need to discover what that is. So it's take every thought captive. Second one is don't be taken captive. Some 70% of young adults, by the time they reach their mid-20s, say, the ones I grew up in church say, I have been taken captive. I don't believe the biblical truth anymore. They were literally taken captive by hollow and deceptive philosophies. So you have to know what those philosophies are so you're not taken captive. And then the third thing is to set the captives free. Everybody in your school does not embrace a biblical worldview, is operating on some false ideology. We need to learn how to talk to them and help them come to a knowledge of the truth, as the Apostle Paul told his disciple Timothy. So those three things, just keep them in mind. Take every thought captive, don't be taken captive, and set the captives free. When we talk about the specifics of how to do that, but often it's just conversation with your kids.
I love that. I love that. And maybe we can talk a little bit about it because through Summit Ministries, I mean, you've developed, as you just mentioned, tremendous insight into the youth of America over the years, and certainly you've kept on top of what's happening right now. So what would you say are some of the greatest challenges that they're facing today?
Well, Jody, we kind of hinted at this, and in the bumper I saw that everybody else saw who's watching the show, it hinted at this as well. The transgender ideology is probably the number one ideology young adults are going to be facing in school this fall. They're going to be told that there is a gender spectrum, and on one end is extreme masculinity, on the other end is extreme femininity. Everybody, it's either G.I. Joe or Barbie, and since nobody is really either G.I. Joe or Barbie, we're all kind of in the middle. We're all transgender. Maybe you're even born in the wrong body. I talked to a grandmother recently. She said, yeah, I raised all of my kids in the church. We took them to Christian camp. She's very involved in the Christian ministry. She said 5 of my 13 grandchildren now identify as transgender. Stephanie and I were having dinner with a family recently. Their daughter said, I had to switch to a new school. And we asked why. She said, because I was the only girl left in my class. What do you mean you're the only girl left in your class? She said, all the other girls in my class decided they were boys trapped in girls' bodies, so they decided to transition to be boys. Your kids are going to face this ideology, and that's why my co-author, Dr. Kathy Cook, who's an educational psychologist, and I wrote Raising Gender Confident Kids. All you have to do, and I know it's late in the day, or it's Friday night, go to genderconfidentkids.com, and we will show you how to, in a very natural way that builds a relationship with your children, bring up these difficult issues and help them come to a knowledge of the truth. And for Washington Watch members or everybody who's watching, you can get a copy of our book for free. We've had a donor who's been able to provide that. The book you showed earlier, Raising Gender Confident Kids, just go to genderconfidentkids.com and you can get all of the information there. We don't have to be afraid, but we do need to be equipped.
That is awesome. All right, and you've mentioned the phrase gender confidence. Go a little bit deeper into that. What is gender confidence, and why does it matter so much that kids have it?
Well, the very first thing we know about human beings, according to Genesis chapter 1, is that God made them in his image. The second thing we know from that very same verse is that God made them male and female. God designed us as males and females. Our biology is male or female. There are not one or two differences between males or females. There are literally 6,500 cataloged differences between males and females. So gender confidence means, for boys, understanding God designed you as a boy. You can be a boy who plays the violin, or you can be a boy who plays football. It doesn't matter, but God made you as a boy, and he wants to grow you into a godly man. And for girls, that God made them on purpose as a girl. They could be a helicopter pilot like my daughter, or they could be doing, in dancing or whatever. But they have been made in God's image. They are a girl, and God wants them to grow into be a godly woman. So that's what we mean by gender confidence. Now, what kids are being told in school is that there aren't two genders, male or female. There's 68 different genders, and everybody is, to one degree or another, messed up. And if you are messed up, then you're a victim of the culture, and we're going to celebrate you being messed up by rolling a red carpet down the hallway and playing music when you come out as transgender or whatever it happens to be. Literally 50% of the schools in the United States of America are doing this with your kids this fall.
Unbelievable. Horrifying. So what is behind this? What's behind the explosion of gender confusion in today's kids? And how can parents respond to it?
Well, it's an ideology, I think, first of all. If you wanted people to believe that there is no God, or that God is irrelevant to anything that is important, then you have to somehow tear down all of the categories of meaning that make them think about God. And the most obvious of those is that we're made male or female. We could argue about what constitutes justice or truth or freedom. People argue about those kinds of things all the time, but male or female, that's super obvious. But if you want to tear down God, you have to get rid of male and female. And so that is the pressure that is being placed on children these days. Not be with facts or evidence, but with a bias based on a false worldview. So I think a lot of people don't realize that we train our kids to not be bullies. We don't want our kids to be the mean ones in school. We tell them, if you see somebody being picked on, you need to stand up for them. What we didn't realize is that our efforts to help our kids be kind have been now weaponized by people with a false view of the world who want to tear down any understanding of truth. I mean, after all, if you can get a little kids to look at a boy or girl and say they can't tell a difference, then you can propagandize them to believe anything.
Wow. So what are the most common, and I want to get back to the book, but what are some of the most common mistakes that parents make when they're trying to navigate this whole topic of gender and gender identity? And what perhaps are some of the warning signs that parents need to look at that perhaps their children are struggling with this?
Yes, well, let me see if I can click through a few of the mistakes that parents make. But let me also say this. Don't beat yourself up if you say, oh, I've done that with my child. This is not about guilt or shame. This is about what do we do now going forward. One thing parents do that I think is a mistake is they dismiss this concern. They don't realize that it's a big issue. But young adults today are 1,600% more likely than people in their 50s or older to say that they identify as transgender. Jody, up to 39% of young people say they identify as LGBTQ. So if you just say, oh, that's so stupid, and you dismiss it, you will miss an opportunity for a conversation. Second thing parents do that's a mistake is to try to debate with their kids. You're not going to win the debate. Your child's just going to go to Google. They're going to Google the word transgender. The very first page, in fact, the first 5 pages of results are all going to be things like, transgender groups saying, we're going to tell you the facts about transgender, none of which is true, but they're saying that it's factual. There's going to be a website there with a law firm to help you legally separate from your parents if they don't approve of your gender identity. There's going to be organizations there to show you how to get cross-sex hormones without your parents knowing about it. Your children are going to see all those websites. You're going to lose the debate. What do you do instead? What do you do instead?
Yeah, we got to be quick. We got about a minute, and I want folks to be able to get your book.
Okay, this is pretty straightforward. You just look for the changes in your child. If they come home and they're a little bit down, you want to ask them, can you tell me what happened to you today that causes you to see yourself the way you do? And when they talk, just start asking, can you tell me more about that? Your affirming of the relationship with your child and helping them understand that God made them in his image is what makes the difference.
Dr. Jeff Myers, thank you so much. All right, our viewers, listeners to Washington Watch, you can get a free copy of this book. Dr. Myers, where can they go to get this?
Just go to genderconfidentkids.com. You'll find the book. You'll find a frequently asked questions of the 24 hardest questions parents have ever asked us about the transgender issue and how to help your kids. You're also going to find videos from my co-author, Dr. Kathy Cook, and myself. We want to help you help your kids and to feel confident in the process.
All right, Raising Gender Confident Kids. Friends, order a copy. Go get it right now. Dr. Jeff Myers, Summit Ministries, thank you so much for your biblical insights. It's always an honor to talk with you, my friend. God bless you. Have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us on Washington Watch.
Thank you, Jody.